They said I was dead. They printed my name in the paper, thought a casket, even picked hymns I used to hum while cooking Sunday stew. My own grandchildren wrote me out of life like I was a bill they'd finally paid off. But let me tell you something. When you hear whispers of your own death while you're still breathing, it doesn't feel like fear. It feels like fire. It started with the mailbox. A thick envelope, no return address, stuffed with church bulletins. On the front page, in loving memory of Josephine Hale, 1939-2025. My face, my dates, a fake obituary. I laughed at first, a low, bitter sound that echoed in the empty kitchen. But when I turned the page, my stomach turned to stone. There it was, a photo of my farmhouse, my porch swing, my garden, advertised as an estate sale. Furniture, jewelry, tools, all priced to move. My life's bones broken down into price tags. I looked around my living room. The Afghan my sister knitted, the rocking chair my late husband built, the photographs of my children already fading in their frames. All of it listed for strangers to paw through. And my grandchildren, those snakes, were behind it. I knew it by the way the notice was signed. Proceeds will go to the family. Family? They used the word like perfume over rotting corpse. I didn't waste time crying. Crying's for people who don't have a plan. I folded the bulletin, tucked it into my apron, and went to work. By Saturday morning, the town buzzed with it. Poor Josephine, gone at last. I heard my name whispered in the diner, saw the pitiful looks from strangers who thought I'd already crossed over. But Sunday, that was the big show. They were holding my funeral at St. Mark's Hall. Open casket, candles, hymns. They'd invited half the town to mourn a woman still walking this earth. I arrived early, standing just beyond the doors, hidden in the shadow of the vestibule. Through the crack, I saw them. My grandsons in pressed suits, my granddaughters in black dresses. Fake tears, fake sobs, hands reaching for envelopes stuffed with condolence money. And there it was, front and center, a casket with my name carved in brass, Josephine Hale. I gripped my cane so tight my knuckles burned. My heart didn't race, it sharpened. I waited until the room was heady with silence, until the priest began, "Let us remember the life of our beloved Josephine." That was my cue. I pushed the doors wide open. The wood slammed against the walls, rattling every candle. Head snapped back, gasps, shrieks. And there I was, alive, breathing, furious. My shoes clapped on the floor as I marched down the aisle. Eyes bulged. Some folks crossed themselves. The priest dropped his prayer book. My grandkids turned the color of curdled milk. I stopped at the coffin, laid my palm flat on the lid, looked right at them. "If I'm in here," I growled, "then who the hell is standing here?" The hall exploded. Screams, whispers, people stumbling back like they'd seen a ghost. And my grandkids, they just froze, caught between the coffin and the woman they tried to bury alive. I didn't come for forgiveness. I came for war. And this was only the opening shot. The sound in that hall stuck to me like smoke. Half the room screaming, half gasping, the priest pale as parchment. But my grandkids, they just stood there, frozen, like kids caught with stolen candy in their pockets. Except this time, the candy was my whole damn life. I didn't yell. I didn't weep. I leaned on my cane, steady, and let silence strangle them. People don't forget silence. It makes guilt louder than any sermon. Finally, I heard a voice from the back. Old Marlene Turner, sharp as a hawk, even in her 80s. Whisper shouted, "She's alive! Josephine's alive!" That broke it. Folks surged forward, whispering my name, grabbing my arms, touching me like they had to be sure I wasn't some ghost come for revenge. I let them. Better witnesses that way. Then came the lies. "Grandma, it's not what it looks like," sputtered James, my eldest grandson, sweat dripping down his temple. "Not what it looks like," I snapped. "You printed my obituary, stuffed your greedy pockets with funeral money, and laid me in a box. Tell me what else it looks like." His sister Mariah put on her crocodile tears. We thought it would help. People give more when there's a cause." "A cause," I spat. "Selling off my furniture while I'm still dusting it? You call that a cause?" The room buzzed, neighbors whispering, a reporter from the Daily Ledger snapping pictures so fast his camera nearly smoked. And then, the best moment, Pastor Elliot bent over the coffin, hand trembling, and lifted the lid. Empty. No body. Just a satin pillow with my glasses laid neatly on top. My glasses, from my nightstand. The crowd roared. Some cursed, some stormed out. A few old church ladies nearly fainted. I turned slowly to face the room, my cane tapping the floor like a gavel. They buried me alive, and they wanted you all to pay for it.
A hush fell again. Even the air felt heavier. My grandchildren shrank in their black suits, all those fake tears drying into shame. I didn't give them another word. Not yet. I gathered the donation envelopes stacked by the casket, tucked them under my arm, and walked out, head high. Outside, the sky split open with the smell of rain. Fitting. I looked back only once to see the doors slam behind me and my grandchildren chasing after, their voices cracking, "Grandma, wait, please!" I didn't wait. Let them run. Let the whole town see them beg in the street. That night, back in my kitchen, I spread the envelopes across the table. Bills, checks, cash, thousands of dollars meant for my burial. I lit the lamp, opened my filing cabinet, pulled out the folder I'd never needed before, property deeds, receipts, bank statements, every paper trail that tied me to this house and every dime I'd ever earned. I placed the funeral money on top. Proof, evidence, ammunition. The next move wouldn't be loud. It would be cold, tween, and final. And when I was done, those ungrateful snakes wouldn't just lose their lie, they'd lose my house. The envelopes covered half my kitchen table, some still damp with sweaty fingerprints, condolence cards sealed with pity, checks signed to my grieving family, my so-called family. I didn't sleep that night. Who could? I brewed coffee at midnight, sat in the dark, listening to the storm thump the gutters. Every gust of wind rattled the old farmhouse windows, and I thought, that's how they see me, rattling, creaking, disposable. By dawn, I was ready. First stop, the sheriff's office. Sheriff Calloway has known me 30 years. I walked in with my cane tapping the tile, dropped the stack of bulletins and envelopes on his desk. He flipped through the pages, eyebrows climbing. The forged obituary, the estate sale flyers, the donation money. His jaw tightened like he'd bitten steel. "Josephine," he muttered, "this is fraud. It's theft. Hell, it's elder abuse." I said, "Good. Then let's make it official." Second stop, the bank. I marched in while the clerks were still sipping their morning coffee, sat down with the manager, slid my deed across the desk. "I want every account frozen, every automatic transfer canceled, and revoke all cosigners, effective now." She hesitated. "That means your grandson—" "Gone.
I cut her off, lock him out, change every code, every lock, every scrap of access. This house, this land, these savings, they're mine, not theirs. She typed fast, eyes darting like a sparrow. When she finished, she slid the papers over. I signed without shaking. My signature cut the page like a blade. By evening, the locks were changed. A young locksmith whistled while he worked. When he handed me the new keys, I made 4 copies. One stayed in my purse, one in the fireproof box, one with my neighbor Carol, one hidden under the loose stone by the porch. Not a single copy for my grandchildren. When the last screw clicked into place, I stood on my porch and breathed deep. The air smelled of wet earth and freedom. But I wasn't done. Revenge isn't just about stopping theft, it's about turning the knife. So I sat again at the table, pulled out a fresh sheet of paper, and wrote the first line of a new will. I, Josephine Hale, leave nothing to those who buried me alive. My pen carved the words into the page, each letter heavier than a tombstone. That night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I didn't answer. The machine picked up. "Grandma, it's James. Please, we didn't mean—" Click. I erased the message, went back to my writing. Because this wasn't their house anymore. It was mine. And soon, the whole town would know it.
The first time they tried to come back was Tuesday evening. I heard the tires before I saw them, squealing gravel, headlights stabbing my porch. A black SUV, too flashy for this road. My grandkids spilled out like they owned the place. Mariah was first, arms folded, face painted with fake sorrow. "Grandma, please, you overreacted. It was just a memorial idea. We didn't think—" "You didn't think?" I barked. "You forged my death notice. You took my glasses off my nightstand to lay in a coffin. You picked through my life like vultures. Don't you dare call that an idea." James stepped forward, trying his old charm. "We only wanted to raise some money. You know the bills on this house are heavy." I raised the new key on its chain, let it dangle in the porch light. "You don't pay these bills. You never have. And you'll never touch this house again." They tried guilt. "Everyone thinks you've gone crazy, Grandma. If you just admit you misunderstood." I laughed. Hard, sharp. It cut the night colder than the wind. "Funny. If I'm so crazy, why's the sheriff building a file on you right now?" That shut them up. I watched their eyes dart toward the windows, like they still expected to barge in and claim their inheritance early. Not tonight. Not ever. "Leave," I said. One word, cold as iron. "Or the next lock you see will be on a cell." They left. Not quietly. Tires screeched, voices swore, but they left. The next morning, I made it public. I walked to the general store. The bell over the door jingled. Folks turned, whispers floating. "She's alive. It's her. That's Josephine." I picked up a newspaper and spoke clear enough for every ear. "I want it known. My grandchildren faked my death. They stole my belongings. They held a funeral to bury me alive. And now they're locked out of my house, my life, and my will." Silence. Then murmurs. A few gasps. One man clapped slow, like he'd just seen a play. That night, the gossip spread faster than lightning. By morning, the Daily Ledger ran the headline, "Local Woman Attends Own Funeral. Family Fraud Exposed." My phone rang non-stop. Reporters, neighbors, even Pastor Elliot, stammering apologies. I let it all ring. I had work to do. At the lawyer's office, I slid my will across the polished oak desk. "Erase them," I said. "Every one of their names. Replace with the shelter downtown and the church fund. They'll get nothing but shame." The lawyer adjusted his glasses.
"Are you certain, Mrs. Hale?" "Dead certain," I said. "More certain than the funeral they staged." That evening, as I watered my porch plants, I saw them again. Not at my door this time, across the street, standing by the SUV, faces pale, eyes hollow, watching. Mariah shouted across the road, desperate now. "Grandma, where are we supposed to go? We sold our apartment. We thought we'd live here after—" Her words broke off. After you died, that's what she meant. I turned my back, went inside, and shut the door. Let them feel it. The cold, the hunger, the same emptiness they tried to seal me into. Because this was only the middle of the story, and I wasn't done burying them yet. By Thursday, the town had split in two. Half wanted to shake my hand for standing tall, the other half whispered, "Poor Josephine, she must have lost her mind." That's how gossip works. It hugs you with one hand and stabs you with the other. I didn't waste breath defending myself. Truth doesn't beg. It waits. That afternoon, Sheriff Calloway stopped by. His cruiser rumbled in the driveway, gravel crunching under the tires. He tipped his hat as I opened the door. "Josephine," he said, "I thought you ought to know. We've got enough to bring charges. Fraud, theft, falsifying documents. The DA's licking his chops." I leaned on my cane, steady. "Good. Let them squirm in a courtroom instead of my kitchen." He handed me a folder. Inside, copies of the forged obituary, screenshots of the estate sale posts, and a photo from the funeral hall. Me, hand on the coffin, eyes burning. Evidence enough to choke them. "Keep this safe," he said. I tapped the cane once on the porch. "Sheriff, it's safer with me than it ever was with them."
That night, they tried again. Not with tears this time, with rage. I heard fists pounding the door. James shouting, "You can't do this! This is our future! You can't just throw us out." I opened the upstairs window, looked down at their red faces glowing under the porch light. "You buried me once," I called, "and you thought I'd stay quiet, but now it's your turn." Mariah screamed, "Where your blood?" I slammed the window shut so hard the glass rattled. Blood doesn't mean loyalty. Blood means nothing when it curdles. The eviction came Friday. I had already signed the papers at the lawyer's office. Sheriff Calloway himself delivered the notice to their motel, the same one they'd slunk into after I changed the locks. Word spread fast. By evening, everyone knew my grandchildren had been legally barred from my property. No more inheritance, no more access, no more future in my house. I sat on the porch sipping tea as a neighbor strolled by. He gave me a thumbs up. "About time someone stood up to them," he muttered. I smiled. Small, but sharp. Revenge doesn't always come with fire and brimstone. Sometimes it comes on stamped paper with an official seal. But I wasn't finished. That weekend, the town held its farmers market. My family used to parade me around there like a mascot, collecting sympathy for being the old widow who needed their help. This time, I walked in alone. I carried a basket of oranges from my tree. Folks glanced, whispered, pointed. I didn't flinch. I walked straight to the donation booth, set the basket down, looked the organizer in the eye. "All proceeds go to the shelter," I said, loud enough for half the market to hear. "Since my grandchildren don't need a cent from me, let's give it to someone who does." The crowd clapped. Not polite, but real. A few people even shouted my name. And across the street, I saw them, my grandchildren, skulking in their SUV, watching me like hungry dogs behind glass. I lifted one orange high, smiled sharp as a blade, and bit into it. Juice ran down my chin. Let them taste the bitterness from where they sat. That night, I wrote one line in my notebook. I am not the one in the coffin. They are. The courthouse smelled of floor polish and stale coffee.
Fluorescent lights hummed above, casting everyone in a sickly glow. I sat in the front row, cane resting against my knee, while my grandchildren squirmed at the defense table. They looked somehow smaller. No black funeral clothes today, just wrinkled shirts and hollow eyes. Funny how fast pride melts when the law has its teeth in you. James tried to speak. It was a misunderstanding. But the judge cut him down with a single bang of the gavel. Silence, or I'll have you removed. When it was my turn, I stood slowly. My knees ached, but my voice did not. They buried me alive, I said, steady and sharp. Not in the ground, but in paper, in lies, in greed. They stripped my house bare, sold my memories to strangers, and smiled while taking money from kind people who thought I was gone. I paused, let the silence crawl over the room. But I am not gone. I am here, and I will not let them take another breath from me. The judge nodded once, like he'd been waiting for those words. The verdict came quick. Guilty on all counts. Fraud, theft, elder abuse. Sentencing scheduled for next month. Outside the courthouse, cameras flashed, reporters shoved microphones at me. Mrs. Hale, how does it feel to see your own family convicted? I didn't smile, didn't cry, just said, it feels like closing the lid on a coffin they built for themselves. The papers ate it up. That line ran in bold across the Daily Ledger the next morning.
But I wasn't finished. That evening, I met with my lawyer one last time, slid a new stack of papers across his desk. This house, I said, goes into a trust. The farm, the savings, everything. When I die, it won't go to them, not 1 cent. It'll go to the shelter, to the town library, to people who deserve it. He tapped his pen thoughtfully. Mrs. Hale, you're cutting them out entirely. No appeal, no loophole? That's the point, I said. They already held my funeral. Now I'll hold theirs on paper. On Saturday, I went back to the house, my house. The locks gleamed new in the morning light. The garden smelled of marigolds and wet dirt. I stood in the doorway, breathing deep, when I heard it, tires screeching. The SUV again. They stumbled out, faces twisted, desperate. You can't do this, Grandma, Mariah screamed. We've got nowhere to go. I leaned on my cane, calm as still water. Then maybe you should have thought about that before you buried me alive. They begged, they cursed, they threatened, but the locks stayed shut, and the law was on my side. I closed the door, slowly, quietly. Final. Inside, I poured myself a cup of tea, steam curling in the sunlight. My table was empty now. No stolen envelopes, no fake obituaries. Just one thing. The deed to the house, signed, sealed, mine. For the first time in years, I felt what they never wanted me to feel. Safe. I thought the courtroom would be the peak, the guilty verdict, the flash of cameras, the judge's voice echoing like thunder. But sometimes revenge doesn't end in the courthouse. Sometimes it spills out into the street, into the marrow of a town that suddenly sees the truth with both eyes open. And my grandchildren were about to learn what it feels like to be seen for what they truly were. The sentencing was still weeks away, but they didn't wait for shame to settle quietly. They stormed through town with red faces and cheap excuses, whining in grocery aisles, pleading at the gas station, cornering neighbors with their version of misunderstanding. But gossip is a wild dog. Once it's off the leash, you'll never catch it again. By Friday morning, the Daily Ledger ran another headline. Funeral fraud family banished from grandmother's house. Banished. That was the word they used, the word I liked best. That afternoon, I walked into the diner on Main Street. The place went silent, forks hovering mid-air, eyes turning like sunflowers. I set my cane down beside me and slid into a booth.
Coffee, black, I told the waitress. She set it down quick, like she was serving royalty. And that's when I noticed my grandchildren sitting 2 booths away, heads ducked, but not low enough. They hadn't left town. No, they sat there with plates of cold fries, whispering, watching me like vultures circling a living beast. I didn't acknowledge them. I sipped my coffee slow. But the rest of the diner did. Heads shook, tongues clicked. One old rancher leaned across and hissed, "Shame on you! Shame!" Their faces crumbled. That was the sweet part, not me saying a word, but the town tearing into them with silence and scorn. Saturday came, and I knew it was time for the final nail. Not a coffin nail this time, something sharper, public, impossible to forget. The town was holding its annual Heritage Fair, a day where booths lined Main Street, banners flapped, kids tugged on balloons, and everyone showed off their pride in this dusty old place. I hadn't planned on going, but revenge has its own schedule. I baked pies, 3 of them, golden crusts, the kind people used to beg me for. I carried them in my wicker basket, my cane tapping the pavement as I walked straight into the center of Main Street. "Josephine!" folks called, hands waving. They crowded around me, asking about the trial, about the house, about how I'd survived such betrayal. I didn't embellish. I didn't need to. The truth was enough. My grandchildren buried me alive, and now the law will bury them properly. Gasps, whispers, then applause, real applause that shook the banners in the breeze.
And right there, across the street, I saw them again, James and Mariah, standing small in the crowd, trying to melt into it. But they couldn't. The crowd turned, fingers pointed. Someone even spat at their feet. It was the kind of humiliation money can't fix. Then came the part I'd been saving. I climbed the small stage set up by City Hall. The mayor had just finished his speech about town pride, about resilience, about heritage. He looked shocked when I took the microphone, but he didn't stop me. "My name is Josephine Hale," I said, steady into the mic. "You all read about my death. You all saw the obituary. But here I stand, alive, breathing, and stronger than the ones who tried to erase me." The crowd hushed. Children stopped fidgeting. Even the wind seemed to pause. My grandchildren printed my death. They took donations. They sold my belongings. They opened a coffin with my name on it. They tried to bury me before the earth was ready. And for that, I lifted the microphone higher, they have lost not only my house, not only my money, but their place in this family forever. The roar that followed shook me down to my bones. People clapped, shouted, some even cried. A neighbor threw his hat in the air. Someone yelled, "You tell him, Joe!" And my grandchildren? They shrank further into the crowd, faces white, eyes wide, exposed like thieves dragged into the light. That evening when I got home, I found a note shoved under my door. The handwriting was jagged, angry. "You'll regret this. We'll get what's ours. Blood can't be erased." I read it twice, then I fed it to the fireplace, watched the flames chew it to ash. Because blood can be erased. Paperwork does it better than fire ever could. The next day, the eviction order went into effect. Sheriff Calloway himself supervised as the last of their things, trash bags full of clothes, broken electronics, boxes of junk they never valued, were dragged from my garage and dumped at the curb. They stood there, humiliated, watching the sheriff hand me the final papers. "Your property is secured, Mrs. Hale. They have no rights here anymore." I thanked him, calm as stone, then turned to them, my voice low, slicing through the air. "You wanted me gone. You wanted my house. Now you have nothing, and you'll never cross this threshold again." Mariah burst into tears. James clenched his fists, but didn't dare step closer. The sheriff stood beside me, hand near his holster. They left with their trash bags,
dragging their shame through the dirt. That night, my house was quiet. No pounding fists, no screaming voices, just me, a pot of tea, and a clean table. I thought about my husband, about the nights we sat here planning a future for children who would one day betray us. The memory didn't sting, not anymore, because now, for the first time in decades, the house was truly mine again. I went to bed with the window open, listening to the crickets, and as I drifted off, one thought pulsed steady in my mind. They buried me once. I buried them forever. The courthouse smelled different on sentencing day. Not just polish and coffee this time, something heavier, final. People filed in slow, their shoes clicking against tile, voices hushed, like a church before confession. The benches filled so fast, some folks stood along the walls. Everyone wanted to see how it ended. The family that buried their grandmother alive. I sat in the front row, cane across my lap. My hair was pinned neat, my coat buttoned to the throat. If they wanted a spectacle, I'd give them one worth remembering. James shuffled in first, wrists cuffed, orange jumpsuit swallowing his pride. He looked thinner, jaw clenched, eyes darting like a trapped fox. Behind him came Mariah, the same colorless outfit, the same chains at her wrists. She still tried for tears, but no one in that room bought it anymore. The crowd didn't soften, it stiffened. The judge entered, robe sweeping, gavel cracking the air. Order. The word hung sharp. The prosecutor read the charges again: fraud, elder abuse, theft, falsification of public records. Each count thudded like a nail. The jury had already done its work. Today was about punishment. "Do you have anything to say before sentencing?" the judge asked. James stood, voice shaking. "We never meant to hurt her. We thought it would help." "Help what?" the judge snapped. "Help you line your pockets with funeral donations? Help you strip a living woman of her dignity?"
Mariah tried next. "I loved my grandma. We made a mistake. Everyone makes mistakes. Not everyone buries their grandmother alive," the judge cut in. The crowd hissed. A reporter scribbled so fast his pen nearly snapped. Then the judge turned to me. "Mrs. Hale, would you like to speak before I deliver the sentence?" I stood, cane steady against the bench. My voice carried, calm and sharp. "They buried me. Not in earth, but in lies. They printed my death, sold my memories, and smiled as they counted the money. They called it family business. I call it betrayal." Silence. Not one cough, not one shuffle. Just the echo of my words in the rafters. I survived. I walked into my own funeral and slammed the coffin shut. And I will not apologize for what came next. They are not my blood anymore. They are strangers, and strangers don't get to own me. I sat. The judge nodded once, heavy, like a man agreeing with the truth. On charges of fraud, theft, falsification, and elder abuse, this court sentences James and Mariah Hale to 4 years in state prison plus restitution for the funds collected under false pretenses. They will pay back every dollar. And they will never again act as representatives, caretakers, or heirs of Mrs. Josephine Hale. The gavel came down like thunder. The crowd gasped, then erupted, not in shock, but approval. Applause broke out in a courtroom, something you rarely see. Even the bailiffs didn't hush it. James hung his head. Mariah sobbed. Chains rattled as they were led away. Outside, the cameras swarmed. Reporters shoved mics close, voices clamoring. "Mrs. Hale, how do you feel? What's next? Do you forgive them?" I looked straight into the lenses, eyes steady. "Forgive? They buried me alive. The only thing I forgive is myself for waiting this long to shut the coffin on them." That line flew across headlines before the day was over. By evening, the internet blazed with it. "Grandmother attends her only funeral, sends family to prison." Back at the farmhouse, I opened the door to silence. No pounding fists, no threats, no shadows pacing the porch. Just me and peace.
I brewed tea, set a single cup on the table, and stared at the empty chair across from me. For the first time in months, the emptiness didn't ache. It glowed, a clean wound. Then I pulled out the final document, my updated will. Their names erased in black ink, replaced with the shelter, the library, and a scholarship fund for kids who needed a chance at a better start. My legacy wouldn't rot in greedy hands. It would grow where it mattered. That weekend, I invited the neighbors who'd stood by me. Carol from next door brought muffins, old Marlene brought her sharp laugh, and even Pastor Elliot showed up, sheepish but earnest. We sat around my kitchen table, the same table they once planned to sell off at an estate sale. We ate, we laughed, we talked about anything but betrayal. When the evening ended, Marlene squeezed my hand. "You buried them without ever lifting a shovel." I smiled. That's the only way revenge should be done. With proof, with silence, with strength. Later, as the house settled into night, I stepped out onto the porch. The air smelled of damp earth, the sky streaked with stars. I thought of that coffin with my name on it, how it had felt, slamming my palm against it, declaring to the world I was still alive. That moment split me into two women, the one they tried to erase and the one who refused to disappear. I knew which one I was now. I tapped my cane against the porch rail, 3 sharp knocks into the night, a punctuation mark. And I whispered into the dark. They buried me once. I buried them forever.